Hey guys, it's Linux Next here. In today's video, we are going to be looking at what is next for Linux in 2025. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening this year when it comes to Linux desktop, when it comes to Linux gaming, when it comes to things like the SteamOS handheld side of things. There's going to be a lot of new things, and we are going to go through and see, well, what is happening in 2025? So I think the most obvious one with Linux is going to be its market share gain. It has been growing for quite a very long time now, ever since its existence, I think. And as we can see right now, it's 4.13% of December, but they haven't updated it yet for the last month of the year. So we're going to see if that has grown, because on the Steam hardware survey, it did grow 0.29%. So that was like a little bit of growth. But I think this year in particular, with some of the things that are going to be happening this year with SteamOS, Linux is definitely going to grow a lot more. And we're going to see a decent amount of decline in Windows, probably also, of people maybe trying out Linux and maybe sticking with it. And maybe by the end of 2025, who knows, maybe Linux will be at maybe 5%, maybe 6%. I'm gonna guess maybe 5.5 or maybe 6%, but it could be way higher than that. We don't really know necessarily, but specifically with the SteamOS handheld stuff, I think we're going to see a big rise in the Linux market share this year. And as I said about the SteamOS stuff, CES is happening, I'm pretty sure this week or next week, and there is going to be Valve at that event as a special guest, and they're going to be showing off some, of course, new hardware with some vendors, and one of them got leaked, and it's the next Lenovo Legion handheld, and I'm pretty sure it's a Legion Go or something, but like a smaller version, and they have a particular unit that has a Steam icon on it. And everyone thinks this is a SteamOS handheld, and I think it is a SteamOS handheld also, just because of Steam being at the CES as a special guest, and they're going to be with Microsoft and some other vendors, probably like Lenovo, to show off some new hardware. So there could be this being shown, and there could be other handhelds being shown also. So who knows, when CES happens, there could be multiple handheld devices running SteamOS, and it's going to be awesome to see this, because I know Lenovo, for example, they sell their hardware over here in local stores like JB Hi-Fi and such. So when it comes to how these handhelds get given to people, it's not online. It's not just online. It can also be in a local store. So that means SteamOS is going to be more publicly shown throughout the world, so that Linux market share can grow even more, and more people get to experience a kind of Linux operating system on their handheld devices. Now, the next one is most likely going to happen. This is hoping, but I mean, last year a lot of things happened with Wayland, and that's why I'm going to talk about it again, because Wayland is going to continue to be improved. I know a bunch of Valve engineers are really pushing for certain new features to be merged into the Wayland protocols, so that newer features can happen. NVIDIA has been improving their drivers for Wayland, so then you can actually use Wayland on a desktop environment. Desktop environments like the Plasma desktop have moved over to Wayland by default on Plasma 6 and above, and they have been working their asses off, improving it day by day, and then releasing bug fixes after bug fixes. And the same with GNOME. GNOME's already a rather stable Wayland desktop environment, even though it may be missing a couple of maybe protocols or features, or some features are experimental. It's still, Wayland is going to be pretty good this year, I would say, with a lot of things being enabled by default on that GNOME desktop, and more features coming to the Plasma desktop also. And then there is the new desktop environments, or one new desktop environment that has been worked on for the past 2 years, I think now, and it's already, you can already use it. It's in an alpha state, and that is the Cosmic Desktop by System 76. And it's been amazing using this, because of just watching the development of how fast this has been developing. It's been absolutely insane, because I only have 7 or 6 some of the developers And I've been watching their activity on GitHub, and it's just like absolutely insane what they've been implementing. And then I've been on top of that making those videos of for you guys every like alpha release or whatever of new features that have been coming out. So I think this year is going to be really good for the Cosmic desktop, because I think the beta is going to start in like a couple of months or something, like 2 or 3 months away. And then maybe a full release, maybe by, if I had to guess, like mid of the year, or maybe past mid of the year, we'll see a stable release, and it will have, you know, fully fleshed out features, and it won't be as buggy, and games will probably work properly, as I maintain a particular issue on their GitHub about games that don't and do work on the desktop environment, and it's pretty wacky with how some of the games launch. So hopefully they improve that type of stuff, which probably will, you know, because they sell laptops and desktop PCs also. So when it comes to compatibility, they need to ensure that that is the best that it can be. And one of the things that another thing that I'm rather excited about to test out on my NVIDIA GPU is the open source NVK driver in Mesa or Mesa. And if you don't know, this driver is the NVIDIA Vulkan. I don't know what exactly the K stands for. I'm guessing I'm saying it wrong, but NVK, it's a Vulkan graphics driver in Mesa. And it's similar to REDV, which is the AMD graphics driver, Vulkan graphics driver. And it, you know, basically allows you to use graphics on the card, so then you can play things like games, for example. And right now, the NVK driver is pretty stable when it comes to just desktop usage. It's missing a couple of features, like you can't use VRR with multi-monitors, or even VRR at all. You can't use HDR. The other thing is gaming on it isn't really ready. I've done benchmark tests against the proprietary driver, and it does lose by quite a bit, I would say, when it comes to performance, or even sometimes games don't even launch. And I did hear that the NVK developers are going to be trying to improve the NVK driver this year, particularly for gaming side of things. So improving DXVK, improving VKD 3D performance, just getting that compatibility with gaming on that driver to a higher standard. So then basically at some point you could probably use the NVK driver by default, and you wouldn't need to install the proprietary driver unless you wanted to use like CUDA or something. In maybe some enterprise thing, or maybe if you want to use DLSS, or maybe you want to use NVIDIA's low latency reflex setting in games. But if you don't want to use that stuff, you could just use the NVK driver, and you'd be having a fine time on the Linux desktop, and you wouldn't have really any big problems. So again, I'm excited to see this driver be improved this year. And of course, there is going to be the other desktop environment releases. So like Plasma 6.3 that is coming out soon, it is going to be having a decent amount of new features. I know there's going to be like new settings UI for the drawing tablet section. It already got a new revamp, but it's going to get another revamp of new UI changes to make it be more fledged out and more just understandable of how to use it. And some new like settings like pressure sensitivity changes, like you can add like a curve. There's going to be better fractional scaling, which that's true. I did read a blog post. Better fractional scaling is going to be improved. So things are just going to look sharper. And there's going to be plenty of other things like being able to copy your panel. So the panel at the bottom of here, if you create a new panel on your other monitor, you can just copy the panel from your main monitor and it'll just copy all the contents, which I think is amazing because I absolutely hate having to set up 2 other panels manually. I wish there was just like a copy and paste where you can just copy the main one and it would just paste it. And that seems like a feature that is arriving in 6.3. And then when it comes to GNOME releases, every 6 months there is going to be a GNOME release, and that's going to include more new features, probably more Wayland fixes, improvements, new features, and all overall desktop environments and like Cosmic, for example, are going to get lots of major improvements this year. And if you missed what happened last month, the Intel Battlemage GPUs got released, and the Linux gaming performance wasn't really that great when it comes to specifically gaming side of things. Windows 11 versus Linux, we can see with Counter-Strike 2, if we look at the Arc B580 right here, we can see 248.9 versus 194.0. And 194 is Ubuntu to Linux. And I'm pretty sure this person is using Mesa Git and like the latest kernel, probably 6.13 RC or something like that. And we can still see there is a big gap in performance. So when it comes to Counter-Strike 2 and maybe some other games like Hitman 3, again, we can see Windows 11 208 versus 143. Now, 140 FPS and 78 FPS, like that's okay. I mean, that's at 4K, 1440p, like 140 FPS on Linux, like that's pretty okay. You can deal with that, or 194 at 1080p. That's fine, but you can see that there is a big gap here that the Linux engineers over at Intel do need to improve this performance side. Like that is a big gap in performance when it comes to, you know, Hitman 3 on Windows 11 versus Linux. Like damn, that's a lot of FPS lost when you move over to Linux to try and use your Intel Battle Mage GPU. So one of the things that is going to be happening this year also is, well, Intel's going to continue to improve these GPUs in Mesa and in the kernel to try and just squeeze out the most performance as it can. And I'll be watching out for Michael to redo these benchmarks to see if there's any performance improvements in the newer Mesa releases or the newer kernel releases. Now, one very exciting feature that is, well, not feature, it's an application that is basically going to solve the modding part on Linux. As you know, if anyone is trying to mod games on Linux through Proton, it can be quite confusing of how to do it, and there's plenty of probably like tutorials out there and plenty of like GitHub projects that you can go and look at and try and test out, but it's rather confusing for a new user. And the Nexus mod team, the people who maintain Vortex, which is a popular modding app on Windows, they are creating a brand new modding application that is going to take over from Vortex. And it's going to have better UI, but the best thing about it is it's going to support Linux both natively and with Proton. And I have already used this with Cyberpunk 2077. It already does support a couple of games. If we do look at their roadmap here, the next game they're going to support is Bethesda games. But for right now, the games that they support is Cyberpunk 2077, Stardew Valley, Baldur's Gate 3, and Bannerlord. So I was testing out Cyberpunk 2077 and I had literally no issues installing any mods. I had at least, I think it was like 15 mods and it launched perfectly fine. There was literally no issues on the newest version of the Nexus mod application. So this is going to improve modding on Linux by so much. It's already like super easy to do it in Cyberpunk. And I'm guessing it's pretty easy to do it in the other games. And I bet Bethesda's going to be also rather easy to just launch the mods. And when it comes to the help it gives you in the app also is really good. So if you do have any issues, it tells you specifically like what the mod problem is, like which mod is the issue of like launching the game. So I'm excited for Nexus mods to, you know, become stable because it's in development right now. So it's like kind of like an alpha software and there can be bugs, but they are quickly improving the application. And so that's why I think this year is going to be really good for modding on Linux, I would say. Now, one thing that did happen recently was about Discord finally bringing screen sharing on WAYLAND with audio. And I was super surprised about that. And I even made a video about it because I wanted to tell everybody about it because, you know, people have been waiting so long for those two features to arrive on Discord, and it finally happened in the Discord Canary branch. But recently, it is no longer available on the latest Canary version. So either you have to stay on a downgraded version of Canary, or you have to wait for them to bring it back. And I do not know why they removed it. Kind of annoying because I was enjoying using it, even though it had some issues and there's some other features that are still missing, like GPU encoding. That is something that is probably really important when it comes to if you're playing a game and you want to screen share, you're going to lose some performance. And there's a bug also where the resolution drops dramatically and it looks like garbage. So hopefully Discord improves screen sharing on Linux even further, and hopefully they bring back the WAYLAND and audio. I mean, I feel like the features that they brought over was kind of like just feedback for them to improve it. Maybe that's why they removed it and they're going to bring it back and it's going to be improved or changed in a better way. But for right now, you can't use it. So I suggest if you want to use screen sharing on Wayland with audio and GPU encoding on AMD cards, I would suggest that you use Desktop, as Desktop is really the only solution for screen sharing on Wayland. It actually has its own API for screen sharing on Discord. There's some other ones that can do it also, but they have some little issues. And I think Desktop is just the best one that you probably can use. Or Equibop, which is a fork of Desktop. And that one also does a good job because it's literally the same as Desktop. It's just forked it and just changed some things around. But hopefully Discord can improve Wayland screen sharing. Hopefully they can bring GPU encoding, because that would be really freaking good if that was available. I could completely stop using Desktop and I could just use the normal Discord client and have no real big issues. And there's two other things that aren't really going to be happening. I'm not sure if they're going to happen, but I hope that they do happen. And that is anti-cheat improvements. As you know, the anti-cheat situation on Linux gaming isn't really up to par when it comes to the Windows anti-cheat side. The runtimes that are used are in user space for EAC and BattleEye, and then when it comes to the kernel level anti-cheat side, you just simply can't use those because it's not allowed on Linux. And usually the game studios don't really trust the Linux kernel because it's open source, so that brings in probably more of chances of a security risk, when no, not really, but the game studios seem to think that. But I really do hope that Valve does show some improvements somehow with the anti-cheat side, and I hopefully see more multiplayer games like Marvel Rivals, for example, that's supported on Linux. And even recently, they banned some people that were using the compatibility layers like Proton, and they even made an official announcement and unbanned those users and said that they figured out what the problem was and they were going to fix it. So I thought that was really nice that a particular game studio talked about it publicly and actually tried to solve the issue. I thought that was really nice. There's a lot of game studios, even though they may allow Proton, they don't talk about it at all in their Discord forums at all. They just don't talk about it. And it was nice to see that a game studio was like, hey, we know these people are using a compatibility layer to play on other operating systems. We're going to unban those people because that was a mistake. That was a problem with our detection of banning people, and we're going to solve the problem. So I thought that was really nice. But again, what I would like to see is anti-cheat improvements from Valve. Either it be some type of server-side anti-cheat that can prove that you don't really need kernel level, or improvements to the runtimes itself, like EAC and BattleEye, just improving it, or even maybe even improving and introducing a kernel level anti-cheat. Even though it's not the best idea, it certainly can be possibly done in some way. There definitely is ways of doing that easily, because it's just a driver. So technically it should be able to be installed like with DKMS or something on a particular Linux kernel that you have to use. That could definitely be a way of introducing kernel level anti-cheats, even if people don't like it. And then the other one I hope for is the Adobe products and the Microsoft products to be introduced into Linux, basically. Even though there is alternatives when it comes to the FOSS side of Linux, like using GIMP or Kdenlive, or you can install DaVinci Resolve, even though it's extremely hard to install it and it's extremely buggy depending on how you install it, and it's only really supported on a distro that's like 3 years old, which is like Rocky Linux, I'm pretty sure is the only one they actually support. If you try to install DaVinci Resolve on Arch, it's a pain to try and get it actually working. I hope that both Adobe try maybe bringing their applications over with something like Flatpak. That is an awesome solution. Or same goes with DaVinci Resolve, switching over to Flatpak so then it can be installed on literally any Linux distro and it would just work out of the box on the majority of desktop environments, only like GNOME having problems with server-side decorations because they don't support it for some reason. And then the other one is the Microsoft Suite applications. I would really like to see Microsoft 365 to be brought over to Linux. I think Microsoft will have to do it at some point, as their developers do use Linux, I'm pretty sure, and they even support Microsoft Edge over on Linux. So at some point, we're probably going to see Microsoft 365, probably maybe not this year, maybe 5 years down the line we might see it. I'm unsure about when they're going to bring it, and maybe they won't bring it. Maybe they'll just leave it on Windows and it'll just be somewhere where if you want to use it, you have to use it on Windows, or you have to use it on a cloud solution on a web browser to actually get to use it on Linux. But hopefully Microsoft 365, Adobe products, and DaVinci Resolve get supported on Linux, a better support like DaVinci Resolve, Flatpak, and Adobe trying to move over to Linux and supporting it through something like Flatpak. Either Flatpak being produced on their website and not on the store, because I know they do the whole subscription thing, so they would have to do it on their own accord, on their own servers, and provide the Flatpak file. But hopefully these things do get supported at some point, maybe this year. Who really knows? And one of the other things that I'm hoping to see is more manufacturers creating their own drivers and submitting it to the Linux kernel. Time and time, I continue to see lots of hardware being supported in the Linux kernel, but then when you go look at actually who's submitting it, it's some random developer that wants this device to be supported, and they've created their own driver to bring support for that hardware. So I really hope that drivers, whatever realm, either it be controllers, particular audio devices like gaming headsets and such, maybe like mouses, keyboards, certain display drivers, for particular monitors maybe, or laptop drivers, are actually going to be supported by the manufacturer and not by some random developer. Even though it's really nice to see Linux developers actually trying to make particular hardware run better or get more features on Linux, I would really like to see the actual manufacturers themselves decide to actually bring proper driver support. And we have seen this with some manufacturers like Lenovo, because of their handheld stuff that they're bringing over, and then the laptops that they have, they've been improving their driver support, so that's really good to see. But I really do hope that other manufacturers do the same thing and they actually bring proper support for their hardware on Linux, and then people just have a better time on the Linux desktop. Now, one of the last things that I'm excited to see is about Vulkan Video Encode. Now, if you don't know what this is, it's basically like NVENC, for example, on NVIDIA GPUs. If you heard of NVENC, it encodes the video of whatever's being shown, and Vulkan is a new one that is going to be supported on every vendor. So NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, they're all supporting this type of technology, and I hope to see this fully fledged out. It's already in FmpEg. I hope to see this in applications like Discord, for example, to use Vulkan Video Encode on like Linux, for example. They could use this and it would be widely used on every vendor. So NVIDIA, AMD, Intel would all support like screen share encoding on Discord by using Vulkan Video Encode, or OBS Studio. They could also support a Vulkan Video Encode instead of me using VARPI, which is what is used for AMD on Linux. And I'm pretty sure maybe Intel. I could use Vulkan Video Encode on OBS Studio, and I would get a pretty seamless experience when it comes to the quality of the encode. Performance of the encode is probably pretty decent also, or like up to par with something like VARPI encoding. So really exciting to see Vulkan Video actually be improved and start being used in specifically like FmpEg and other Linux projects, and I'm pretty sure it will probably be used on Windows also. And that does it for this video. If there's anything that I have missed or something that you're particularly excited about when it comes to Linux in 2025, definitely leave a comment down below. I'd really like to know your thoughts about it, and definitely give a like. Subscribe to the channel if you want to. Thank you to my supporters. I'll show a screenshot of you now. I really do appreciate you guys giving me money every single month. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.